Worked.
Yay!
Amazing. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. My God,
Yay!
today was literally the craziest day at work. And I was like, of course, it would be like so insane when I have this tonight,
I
but
know.
we rallied and I'm so happy.
Yay, good. Let me make sure my camera's like all
I,
clean here.
I know. Maybe I should do the
I know.
same. You have the
I
good
just thought it was like looking.
lighting
I know
in
I've
the
got the interview ring light is on and everything. It's like really
yeah.
dark without it. So
I would have
I feel
had
like
to
it
like
makes
move
me.
my desk away from the wall to get my ring light set up. And my apartment in New York is just too small. Like I'm sitting at my desk right now and you can see like the end of my room is my bed right there.
Yeah.
So,
Luckily,
um,
I still got like my interview set up from residency interviews this year. So
oh
I've still got like
nice.
a pretty easy kind of setup
Yeah.
here for, I've got like a nice plant in the background, like
Love.
a little
I know
light,
it
some
looks like
art,
so
like
homey and like personal. I'm like, yes,
hmm
accept her right now.
so nice. Yes, that's right. Match me.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm so excited. People are joining. And we can just like start with our intros. So, hopefully everybody knows at least one of us,
Hopefully.
because you found out about this. But for the new people there, my name's Morgan. I am a third year medical student at NYU Grossman School of Medicine in New York City, planning to apply into family medicine next year. When I applied to medical school, I applied during like the 2021-2022 application cycle coming from Clemson University Public State School in South Carolina. I applied via AMCAS and TMDSAS. I was accepted to 12 medical schools with scholarships, and since then have really like worked on this platform, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all about just like demystifying and increasing transparency in medicine and helping pre-meds get to where we're at. So that's a little bit about me.
Yay. I'm so excited. Okay, I'm Kennedy Dawson. I am a fourth year medical student at Kansas City University, which is an osteopathic medical school. I am currently applying to anesthesiology, so the application process is pretty much over. I'm basically just waiting to turn in my rank list and
Let's
see
say,
where we end up for the anesthesia match. So cross your fingers for me that we have good news in March. I am a non-traditional like medical student, so I went to undergrad to a small private school called Southern Nazarene University. Probably never heard of it. I played soccer there, small D2 college. I graduated from there and then went and got my master's in public health at UNC Chapel Hill. So lived in North Carolina for a few years, which loved it. The weather is beautiful
oh,
there.
yes.
It's so nice. But got my master's, and then I did not get accepted to medical school the first time. And so I retook the MCAT, took a gap year. This was like during peak pandemic times. I graduated with that master's in 2020. So great time to graduate with a
Yeah.
public health degree. I worked in public health and in COVID relief for a year. So worked a full-time job. I didn't go to school at that time. Retook the MCAT, did a little bit better and kind of revamped my application, which I'm happy to talk about, kind of things I did
Yes.
differently, and then ended up getting into KCU after that. So I applied to AMCAS and then a COMLEX. I did not do the Texas med school application. I applied mostly DO schools, so I can talk about kind of the osteopathic version of everything. And then I ended up getting another master's. I guess I'm technically still getting it, but I ended up getting my MBA in medical school and doing a dual degree program, which was a big part of why I wanted to go to KCU specifically. And that's something that's been brought up in like every single residency interview that I have done. So happy to talk about literally anything. I also run an Instagram similar to Morgan, and I talk a lot about like demystifying medical school and just like what is it actually like? Like what do you actually need to do to succeed? Do you have to be a genius? Answer is no, you don't. I feel like I don't do quite as much pre-med stuff, but I also like to share a lot about what I'm going through right now. I like to keep it very real. But yeah, I'm excited to just chat and hang out.
Yes, you should be following both of us. I feel like we have some overlap in our content, but again,
Yeah.
she's a year ahead of me in medical school, at osteopathic medical school, doing a dual degree. So there's also a lot of differences there. And of course, like we're at different medical schools, we're living different lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like it's just nice to see like realistic day in the lives and get those
Yeah.
perspectives. But amazing. I'm so excited. Honestly, I feel like I just learned a couple of things about you that I didn't know, like that you played soccer. I don't think I was aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into it. So I think my vision is like to split this into two pieces.
Okay.
So we'll start with the portion of are you ready to apply to medical school?
Yeah.
So just a couple of things to like think about there because applications are going to open in May and really like now's the time, it's almost February to really think like really decide, is this the year that I'm going to apply to medical school? I've been doing a lot more one-on-one sessions and this is like a really common question. So I think we can just dive into that. And I just want to share like a resource that I'm thinking about is the AMC. They used to have like their core competencies that I shared with a lot of people, but now they're called AMC, the pre-med competencies and what they mean. So it's just like 17 things that medical schools should be looking for when they're looking for students and evaluating their applications. I know this is also like whether you're applying via AMCAS, COMLEX, TMD, SAS, like that doesn't really change like what medical schools are looking for. And even though this is like posted by the AMC, again, every medical school kind of like has their own thing, but I always tell people to kind of like look at those and think about do they have activities and things that are in majority of those categories, just to get an idea. But I can kind of chat a little bit about my medical school application, and then if you want to chat a little bit about your medical school application, and then we'll take a little break and we'll do some questions as it relates to like, am I ready to apply to medical school? So make sure you guys go ahead and like start thinking about your questions and start dropping those. And like I said, today I was like crazy at work, so my brain is just not working. So I actually have my AMCAS application here. So
brilliant. What a great idea. I should have done that.
You got time to find yours, or I'm sure you probably have it in your head. You probably have it like thinking about residency applications.
Honestly,
and stuff
I
like that.
probably have more of it up here than I probably realize.
Yeah.
You know, we'll ponder.
So I decided to apply traditionally, or straight through, as people say, which means I applied the summer after my junior year of undergrad. So throughout my senior year of undergrad, I was like interviewing at medical school, submitting secondary applications, and then the summer after I graduated undergrad, I started medical school. So that's a little bit about what my journey looked like. And I felt like I was ready to do that because I came into undergrad with a lot of dual credit courses. I actually had about like 69 credits coming into undergrad. So I really could have graduated in like 2 years. Thought I was going to graduate in 3. COVID happened. And like, you know what? Might as well hang out for all 4 years. But that did give me time. So like the summer after my sophomore year of undergrad, I took my MCAT. I got a 519. So I felt like academically I was ready to go. And then right at the beginning of my junior year, I got an amazing job opportunity to work at a private family medicine practice in South Carolina. And I did a lot of like patient intake, coordinating if they needed prescriptions, helping with injections, doing a lot of COVID testing because I started that job in August 2020. And so I feel like after I kind of went through that, it really, of course, solidified like medicine was right for me. I loved the intersection of medicine and public health. But I also felt like I had the clinical experience, I have the academics. I was always involved in like community service and different things like that. And so I felt like I was at a point where I also had like good people that could write letters of recommendation. And I personally, because of the way that my schedule worked out, my senior year was like very chill. Majority of my classes were online because of COVID. We were still transitioning. I was taking like fun classes. I think my last semester, the only class that I took in person was meditation and relaxation. So it was literally like show up and do yoga. So I feel like I kind of got like a pseudo that semester as well. So I felt like I was energized and ready to start medical school when I applied. So that's kind of how I knew that I was ready to apply. I don't know, Kennedy, your thoughts or, you know, how you decided what year you were going to apply.
Yeah, that's actually perfect because I feel like that we had like almost some opposite experiences that both got us to the same position. So I feel like this is like a perfect like topic for us to go through. So like you were saying that you are a traditional applicant, like went straight through. So as I said earlier, I was a non-traditional, which basically means that I did not apply straight out of college. Like I took multiple gap years between graduating from college and starting medical school. Whereas the traditional route is, like Morgan said, you just go straight through. So for me, I kind of will answer it in two parts of like why, when I realized I wasn't ready and when I realized I was.
Amazing.
Number one, like I mentioned earlier, I was a college athlete. So I played at the NCAA Division II level, which isn't like as crazy as Division I, but it's definitely not nothing. Like my sport was, my sport felt like a full-time job. Like there was a lot to do and a lot of like balancing that with academics, which was really, really difficult. And so I felt like because I was a college athlete, I essentially had very little time for extracurriculars. And so that was a huge part of why I decided to delay my application, because I really wanted to play soccer. That was something I was very passionate about. I got a scholarship, paid for school, like all of those things were unnecessary. And I felt like it was still like, obviously something I wanted to do. But because I played the sport, I usually, like all of my time when I wasn't studying or in class was going to soccer and going to weights, going to conditioning in the morning, working out at 6 a.m. Like it was crazy schedule. And so by the time I got to kind of that junior year time where you really need to be making decisions about like, am I going to take the MCAT? Am I going to apply now? I kind of took a look at my application as a whole and looked at like the big things of like, do I have enough clinical experience? Do I have good letter writers? Do I have any shadowing experience? And like, those are kind of the three things that I was like the numerical things that I felt like I really needed.
Right.
I had really good experiences from college. I got good grades. Like I did well in my classes. So I felt like academically that was fine. I hadn't taken the MCAT yet, but I felt like I did not have enough clinical experience at the time because I couldn't have a job like at all.
Yeah.
So there was no chance. I don't even think we were allowed to have jobs actually.
I can't even imagine trying to do both. Like, no,
there was
absolutely
no way. So couldn't do any clinical experience, didn't have time to shadow either. Every weekend I was either playing in a game or traveling to a game, whatnot. And I felt like I had good letters from my professors, but not a physician that could really vouch for me and like knew me on a personal level. Right. So for all of those reasons, kind of informed my decision to wait, because I just felt like my application wouldn't be complete at the time. And I felt like it would just be a waste of money essentially to apply at that point. So I ended up deciding to wait. I also got married like in this time of like around like graduation time. And so I realized I'm like literally not even wearing my ring. I'm just at home chilling. But I was a ring by spring girly, and I am still married despite my lack of a wedding ring on right now. I don't know if people will like notice that or not, but
no, they'll definitely be like commenting for sure.
And people are gonna be like, "Where's the ring?" But he's literally like in the next room over. He's literally right there. So
Britton Works, you can find him.
Yeah, Great Britain Woodworks. He's a woodworker, so he's got his own page too. But we got married, and he studied theology in undergrad, and so he wanted to also pursue graduate degree in that because he wanted to teach, which is what he does now. And so we kind of also had this like moment of, well, we need to figure out how our future can fit together, because obviously we're trying to consider each other throughout this process. And so he said, I really want to get this master's degree. And I said, I really want to take some time off and like get a job before medical school. And so that kind of really worked out. And so what we decided to do is he kind of led the way with like where to apply for school, because I was like, why don't we do this? Because wherever I get in med school, we're going to go. So this is like your one chance to have some control over your life, considering for the last, I don't know, like 8 years. I
was going to say,
forgone that control. So he applied to some graduate schools, ended up getting in, and so he got into Duke, which was like amazing. So I was like, all right, we're moving. So then I applied to graduate schools in the North Carolina area and got a job. So fast forward a few years, I got a job as a medical assistant in a dermatology office. That was kind of my clinical experience, and also relationship with a doctor. Kind of killed two birds with one stone.
Only way to do it. I did the same thing.
It was amazing. Like, it's a great, like, I would say private practice offices are really good ways to get like experience, because a lot of times the people that hire you will like mentor you at the same time, and it's really nice.
Also go through all the hoops of like the healthcare systems and different things like that.
Totally.
Yeah, so much better.
Totally. So after all that, I ended up taking the MCAT like during my graduate program. Hindsight, I wish I would have done it in college and just like gotten it done because I felt like that was harder for me. Oh no, you're frozen. Am I frozen?
Not froze. Sorry. I was texting my roommate. That's what happened. My bad.
Okay, you're good. I
I
was
didn't
like,
know that was going to happen. She doesn't have an iPhone, so I can't talk to her on my computer. So,
oh, boo. Okay, that's okay. I was afraid my Wi-Fi was cutting off, but
no, you're good.
anyway, I wish I would have taken the MCAT, but like during college, even though I wasn't gonna apply yet. So maybe learn from my mistakes because the info was still fresh and I had to relearn a lot and
Right.
that sucked. I did not do well in the MCAT at all, for sure. That is not
But
like
you're
my
here,
strong
and
suit,
that's all
but
that
I'm here.
matters.
And it did not like inform how I did in medical school because I did well in
No,
medical school and did well on boards. So if people are concerned about that too, just
literally does
take
not
that.
matter.
Yeah, didn't even matter. But I think the clinical experience, the like life experience that I just had gained, especially, and then having like a better personal statement to talk about like why do I actually want to do this? All of those things kind of together, those experiences I was able to gain within those few years after college, that's what told me that I was like ready to go to medical school after that and was like ready to apply. Because I was like, you know, I have a more complete application
Right.
and there's evidence as to why I want to do this now. And I actually got like everything done and then got some bonus things like a master's. You know, it's not necessary for medical school, but it was a good talking point. And I still talk about it even in residency interviews. I talk about it all the
Yeah.
time.
Amazing. Amazing. I'm so glad that you shared that. I think this was literally perfect. Like you were the first person that I thought of for this because
Thank
just
you.
thinking about it, like we have such different stories, but our
Yes.
paths have aligned so
Mhm.
much. I remember I was texting you studying for step one and then
Yeah.
studying for step two.
Yes.
And now like thinking about where we're gonna apply. And of
Oh
course,
my
like our
God.
paths are again different anesthesia versus family medicine, but still like we're both going to be
Yeah.
amazing physicians, and I just think
That's
that's
so
so
crazy.
cool.
You've got your
um
sub-Is coming up. Like you have such
oh
a
my
big
god,
year. Oh my God. I'm
it's
so
not
excited for
real.
you. It's not
Apparently the
real.
attending that I was working with today thought I was a sub-I, so she said that at the end of the day, and I was like, bestie, give me less responsibilities, please. I just want to be a basic medical student. Like
Yeah.
it's just too much. It's too
No,
much.
it is. The
um
the fact that like by July I will be Dr. Dawson and I will be able to like place orders and like write prescriptions for people. I'm like unwell, completely
right.
unwell thinking about it. I'm
Well,
like,
and then
who
there's
decided
like
this?
probably like 15, 20 people in my class that I started with that are in the 3-year program here. And so I'm like, these cannot be the same, like these people that I came in with, these cannot be the same people that in May are going to be like MDs, like
Yeah.
like
No.
physicians. It's about like, we were like kikiing at Revisit like yesterday.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's literally so weird. But okay, let me think if there's anything. Does anybody have any questions as it relates to like, are you ready to apply to medical school? Anything like that? I'm just trying to like search in the chat just to make sure I didn't miss anything. My roommate says sorry. Thanks, girly. She said sorry for texting me and then this
Oh,
freezing.
someone put something. Did you click on the question thing? Someone put something
Oh,
in there.
let me do it. Okay,
Okay.
this is yeah. Do you
Yeah.
want?
Yeah,
Okay.
they said, I want to apply this cycle and I want to apply early so that my chances are higher. So how late can I take the MCAT to have my scores back and still submit early? No retaking MCAT scenario. So I'm not worried about
Yes.
retaking it. That's a really good question.
Yeah, that is honestly such a good question. And I think it just varies. I know like AMCAS and ACOMAS, like they open around the same time, but I know there's a little bit more flexibility from what I've heard with ACOMAS. I think for
I think so.
AMCAS, like just for people, like I think it's so important just like break down the cycle. So if you ever see me posting about the 2026 application cycle, if you're applying in May of this year, that is your cycle. The cycle name is based on the year that you're starting medical school.
Yep.
So the 2026 application cycle runs from like May 2025 to, you know, whenever you start medical school in 2026. And medical school admissions is rolling. So, you know, you can usually start submitting your application at the end of May, and then there's like this 1 month waiting period that gives people time. And then towards the end of June is when they'll like send the applications to medical schools. They'll start sending you secondaries. After you send your secondaries, they'll start sending you interview invites. After that, they'll start sending acceptances. Usually October 15th is like the first day they can start sending acceptances. So if you look on like the official website, someone will say like, okay, I think September 30th or whenever the last September like MCAT test date, that's the latest that you can take it for this cycle. I would say June would be like the latest I would take it and still want to be in that early phase, because if you take it in June, it'll give you like a month to get it back. So like let's say you take it on the end of at the end of June, you get it back at the end of July, then you're still like before most people have gotten interview invites and different things like that. But again, I know everybody's always saying like no retaking scenario. You want to consider you might have to retake it. You also want to consider, okay, if I'm studying for the MCAT in April, May, June, am I having time to work on my application? So then will I have time to also submit my application early if I'm taking the MCAT then? So it's a very like delicate balance of planning everything out. What do you think? We can also like agree to disagree, whatever.
No, I definitely agree. I think a June MCAT is like that's kind of a really good time. I feel like it depends on, I mean, I know that I understand the no retaking scenario because I love the positive vibes of like assuming we're not going to have to retake, but coming from someone who did have to retake and was not expecting that because I had a lot of test anxiety around the MCAT. And so my practice tests were like, my last practice test was like, I was doing great. I think I got like, I was really trying to get in like around a 510 range, and I think I got like a 507 or 509, something that was like really close. And I was like, you know what? I feel good. We're gonna go. Dropped like more than 10 points on the real thing and got a sub, and then walked out with a sub 500 score. And I was just like, 6 days ago, I got like more than 10 points higher than what happened on test day. So like, I get the vibes of we're going to think positively, we're going to manifest a good score, but also you never know what can happen. I did not expect that. I didn't expect the amount of test anxiety I had, and I had to learn and like, you know, revisit a lot of things.
Right.
And I will say, if you can get it done earlier so that you have some time to like recoup and figure out what your move's going to be if something goes wrong, I recommend that, because it is not fun to try to scrape together another MCAT test date in like a month. No. And I would not recommend, like, if you think everything's going well and then your actual MCAT score is like not good and you don't know what happened, which was like my scenario, I would not recommend trying to like rally and do it again in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I would like really take some time. Like this, you know, med school will still be there and everything will be fine. Right. But I think like, you know, June is great. I think May is great. I think that kind of early summer is great. Once you start getting to that like August test dates, that's when you kind of you don't really have room for error anymore. So if you're confident, go for it, but just know that like you never know what can happen if something crazy happens. And I'm not saying it would, but you probably want to do it a little bit earlier rather than later.
Agree. And it just becomes like such a cost benefit analysis. And this is why I never give absolutes whenever I'm like mentoring with students. I try not to give absolutes whenever I'm posting on social media as well, because everybody's story is different. If you're preparing like to take the MCAT in May and you feel like you're close but you're not quite there, like you feel like you get an extra boost of like 5 points if you study, you know, another month in June, or maybe even more points if you're studying full time, like it then becomes a cost benefit analysis. Like, will I be a stronger applicant if I wait this 1 month? Would it make me more competitive for scholarships or schools that I want to attend? All of that stuff. So it's just really like such a case by case basis, but definitely agree like with that June era. As we're getting into that, like medical school applications, I saw a question about MD versus DO. Like, what's the vibe? How did you decide to apply? And I think my answer for this is like always weird. There's like so much like MD versus DO. Like I don't even want to say that anymore because like it feels like this, you know, this tug of war. And I actually was just talking to someone not in medicine the other day, and they were saying like, oh, like who are these like doctors that aren't doctors that are like trying to be doctors? And I was like, I don't know. And I was like talking about like, are you talking about like APPs? Like what are you talking about? And they were like, no, like let me look it up. And they were like osteopath. And I was like, wait. I was like, we literally get the same training. They actually get more stuff than us. So I was like, do not believe that, whatever you see. So let's just chat about that. I will say I only applied to MD schools. And I think the main differentiating factor for me was like considering I knew I was gonna apply to AMCAS because like
Mhm.
my state schools. I also like Baylor was my dream for forever. And the year I applied, they switched it to TMDSAS, which really annoyed me. It used to be on
That
AMCAS.
sucks.
So I was like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm already preparing like two separate applications. The TMDSAS application is
Yeah.
literally the worst application ever. It's so annoying. And so I was just like, you know what? I don't really think I want to do another, like application service. And another thing that I saw was the super high like fees that you have to pay if you're accepted to hold your
Yeah.
spot. They're non-refundable for like DO schools, but they are refundable
Mhm.
for MD schools. So I think that's really what it came down to for me, like deciding not to apply. But it was never like MD versus DO because I work with
Yeah.
so many attendings and I don't think like the only time I go to look is when I actually have to like document like supervised by
Mhm.
blank blank and I literally never know. So
Yes.
tell me a little bit about your experience
Yeah.
and then just tell the people like about OMM,
Oh,
what
yeah.
you learn and that you literally have taken all the same board exams that I've taken and
Yeah.
debunk it right now.
Crazy. We're gonna debunk this. Thank you for sticking up for our,
All the time.
our DO profession. Okay, so here's like the short and sweet, like the elevator pitch for like DO
I'm
versus
ready.
MD. So DO and MD, it's the same 4 years of medical school. Like everything is the same. Here, there are like minute differences, and they're only additions, not subtractions. So
Exactly.
every single thing that Morgan learns in her MD program, I have learned. Everything that Morgan will be able to do when she graduates, I can do when I graduate. I am still like, I will be a full-fledged physician. And if you met me in the hospital and I was your doctor, you would not know if I was a
No.
DO or an MD unless you looked at my like name tag and my badge. Because truly, in my experience, and I have worked at a lot of hospitals now, mostly doing a lot of anesthesia, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
But in every single place, I have never been able to tell the difference between a DO and an MD in practice.
No.
And that's probably specific for anesthesia because what DOs do learn that MDs do not learn is osteopathic manipulative medicine. I think it's super cool. Sadly, I'm not really going to use it as an
They
anesthesiologist,
did so
but
much of it when I was doing my elective at home in
Mhm.
family medicine. I was like, actually, I
Yes.
want to hang out with the
Mhm.
DO attendings today so I can see OMM. I was
Yeah.
like, everybody else.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
Like it's so fascinating. So I think a lot of people think that OMM is basically like chiropractor practice, and
Mhm.
it is not at all. Like, do we know how to like do the cool like cracking backs and cracking necks and stuff? Yes, I know how to do it safely. And so because of that, I don't do it very often. Like it's not, I would never recommend just someone to go get their neck cracked every week. I think that's absolutely crazy. um, but it's much more than that. We do a lot of therapies and treatments that are based on like your musculoskeletal system.
Mhm.
And so a lot of the treatments can be used for pain. They can be used for different diagnoses that I can make with my hands. So what they taught us to do at my medical school, in addition to the regular medical training, is I would have specific labs for hours and hours upon hours learning how to diagnose someone's what we call a somatic dysfunction, which could be a soft tissue diagnosis, it
Mhm.
could be a muscular diagnosis, it could be something with the joint not having the same range of motion as the other side. There's a lot of options. And I learned how to diagnose those things with my hands and then how to treat them. And now there's a lot of range of like why you can use this. I have used OMM to treat headaches. I've used OMM to treat like musculoskeletal injuries. I've used it on my mom. She is a bodybuilder, and so she works out all the time.
Yeah.
And she's a bodybuilder and personal trainer, and her muscles are always just like screaming for help. And she'll have like, tightness, she'll have knots, she'll have like, lack of range of motion because she's really sore. And I can fix all of that for her.
I
And I
really
do
need you to like
often.
fix this muscle spasm that I have right now. I've been
Yes.
getting back into the gym and my arm is like, what are you doing? And I'm like,
Mhm.
girly, I don't know. I'm just trying
Oh
to
my
get healthy, I
word. Literally. I literally had a neck spasm from hell
guess.
like a couple weeks ago, and I literally did OMM on myself to try to like
You
treat it.
really need
It
that.
was terrible, but we gotta end up getting it fixed. But there are a myriad of treatments that we can do in OMM. It's very, very useful for family medicine and primary care. It's great for peds. You can treat kids, you can treat babies. There are like concepts that come from OMM that we use for like pediatric diagnoses, like gas, like constipation, helping them just kind of move things along. Like that screams like an OMM kind of vibe to it if people are doing that. And then there's also some visceral somatic diagnoses that are a little too complicated to like fully dive into right now. But myriad of things. We spend at minimum 200 hours learning all of these diagnoses. And so then that's something that I can provide as an extra tool in the toolbox. Like all of us that are practicing DOs, I have never met a single DO that's going to do OMM and not prescribe the appropriate medication for you. We are going to do all of those things that any other physician would do. We just have this extra tool in our toolbox that we can use to just like add a little bit of a something, If I can see a patient like on a family med rotation and I can teach them a couple of stretches that will also help in addition to the medication I'm giving them, I love it. I'm here for it. And so it's like we talk about holistic medicine, and I think that the osteopathic philosophy ties in a little bit more of that holistic, but it does not shy away from the evidence-based medicine. We do all of that. We just also focus on how does your stress like manage with this, and what's your stress level doing to it? What about this stretch? Maybe this would help, or what else is going on in your life? We just ask about the whole person, and that's the way we're taught from day one, which I love. Like I was a big fan of that. I wanted to learn how to do OMM. I thought it was fascinating. I also thought I wanted to be a sports medicine doctor going into med school, so that was also a big part of it. And we did
so much,
hard right shift to anesthesiology, but that's what third year happens. That's what happens every year for everyone. But that's why I chose to do osteopathic. I did apply to MD schools, just like some of my state schools, but majority of my application was a COMLEX for the osteopathic application, simply because I wanted to learn OMM, and I thought it was really interesting, and I wanted that. I thought to myself, if I can have this extra tool as a physician, why would I not take the time to learn it? Like med school is going to be the same. I'm going to be able to do whatever specialty I want anyway. So let's go, like let's do it. And it really worked out, because I thought it was a lot of fun. Even though I'm not really going to use it, I still use it on my family and friends all the time. So big fan.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you shared that, and I hope people will look at that and understand that. I honestly do feel like when I was like a pre-med student, I just saw all this information online and all this bias, and now that I'm here and I'm literally at NYU, and guess who they hire? They hire MDs, they hire GOs, like you're a doctor. They just hire people that are good at their job and that take care of patients, and I think that's the most important part. So since it doesn't matter MD or DO, let's chat about what actually matters when you're considering what medical schools to apply to. And I think the first thing we can chat about is like the number of schools to apply to. And I wish I could just give you like an easy number, and this is also such a long conversation that I have with students. So let's just share like our applications. Again, I felt like I was ready to apply to medical school. I wouldn't say I felt like super confident, but I felt confident. Like I had the clinical experience. I knew the attending that I had worked with, like we built like a COVID-19 like vaccine like drive-through development. Like I knew he was going to write a strong letter for me. I felt like my professors were going to write strong letters. And I also had 3 state medical schools that I was applying to in South Carolina. And so given that, I did not want to spend a lot of money. Well, I mean, I guess I spent like $2,000. So that still is a lot of money, but I didn't want to spend like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And so I ended up applying to 16 schools. That was with like a lot of back and forth in deciding what I wanted to do. I submitted 15 secondary applications, got, I think, 14 interviews, did 13 of those, got 1 wait list and 12 acceptances. And another reason I felt like I was able to like interview at all these schools is because I applied during COVID, so I didn't have to pay to travel everywhere. I did like virtual interviews. So a lot of different factors to consider. I thought 16 was like the perfect number for me. If I had to write one more secondary application, I probably would have been like so over it. But that's kind of like where I landed on. I started with my state schools, and then I looked at like the surrounding areas. I considered definitely like location. I knew I wanted to go to like a pass-fail school. I was interested in more cities, so I applied to like Northwestern in Chicago. I applied to like Einstein and NYU in New York City. I applied to like WashU in St. Louis, different things like that. Vanderbilt, so like a lot of like bigger cities, and then of course my state schools as well, and it worked out. But Kennedy, you want to tell us like how many schools you applied to, and then we can kind of dive into like some of the specifics.
Yes, and I tried to find my med school application. I cannot find it. So we're gonna
No
like
worries.
it's gonna be right off the top of the dome.
Yes.
I know for a fact. So my like I've been chatting about kind of like having a bad MCAT score and just like a low MCAT score to apply with, and I got in with my low MCAT score because I struggled for sure. So because my MCAT score was so poor, even though I had a master's degree and I had a great college GPA, I felt like that was a little bit more of like a red flag, kind of weighing my application down a little bit. And so I felt pretty worried. I felt really anxious about it because the MCAT had just given me such trouble.
Yeah.
And I had so much test anxiety. It was such a struggle the entire time. And like, thank goodness that like my board exams have gone great and we've like managed. We've grown since then. But because of that, I applied majority DO, and I think I applied to like almost every DO school in the country. I mean, minus like, I applied very broadly.
How many are
there? I was just, oh God, I don't even know.
Like, are we talking about like 50, like 100?
I feel like it's less than 100.
Okay, how many DO schools are in the US?
I know
42.
It's gotta be like, oh, okay, perfect, 42.
Okay,
yeah, there you go. Because I was like, I definitely feel like it wasn't that much. I don't know.
That's based on AI, so it could be right, it could be wrong. Who knows?
And there's like different campuses too. Like some of the DO schools have the same school but different campuses, which like mine is one of those. So Kansas City University, it's one application, but there are two campuses, one in Kansas City, Missouri, and one in Joplin, Missouri.
Same thing
so
it's CCOM, because there's one in Spartanburg in my hometown, then there's one in Auburn that I know someone like one of my best friends goes to. There's like so many different ones.
Yes, that's very common for DO schools. And I think one thing that's kind of an aside, but it's important if you are applying to a DO school that has multiple campuses, when you interview with them or when you're talking to someone from admissions, ask if the curriculum is the same on those campuses. That is like actually something that I would never have thought to ask, because at my school, KCU, our curriculum is exactly the same. Both campuses have the same exams, same lectures, same labs, same everything. It's like standardized.
Right.
So there's no benefit to being on one campus versus the other, because everything we're getting is exactly the same. And that was important to me, because I was like, well, I don't want to feel like I want to get the same education from KCU because that's the school I want to go to.
Right.
So that's important. Not every school does it that way. So that's important to ask about and to be able to figure out like, if the campuses are different, what do you want to do about that? You know,
technically my medical school has like a sister school or a partner school. Of course, they're very different. The Long Island campus is more focused on primary care, and NYU doesn't even have family medicine. That's a conversation for another day. Sorry, where was I going with that?
The different campuses, doing the same thing.
Curriculums are totally different there. So something to look at for sure.
Because I know that's a question that I get in my DMs a lot from people who are applying to Kansas City University, or they get accepted or something, and they're like, what campus should I go to? And truly, it doesn't matter. It's just more about what city you want to live in, honestly. But yeah, I applied to a lot of the DO schools. I did a lot of secondaries. I couldn't tell you how many, and I think my MCAT score is a sub 500. I took it like 2 or 3 times, and I could not break that 500 on like the real deal. And so I only got one interview at my medical school, and I ended up getting accepted there.
All you need is one.
That's true. Yeah, all you need is one. And honestly, they didn't even ask me about my MCAT score. Not even a little bit. Never asked me. So I think that it definitely hindered me from getting past like a lot of those screens, because it was a sub 500. But I looked up a lot of like what schools, like what their cutoff was, if they had a filter. I tried to like get rid of ones that had one that I knew of, things like that. I had to feel like I did a little bit of like extra strategy, because I knew my MCAT score was going to be a red flag. And I made sure that my personal statement was the best personal statement anyone has ever read.
I love it.
And I truly think my personal statement and my interview are what saved me. Like, I'm a very good interviewer. I feel very strongly about my interview skills, and that like I have really good interview skills. And so I feel like that, in addition to every other part of my application being pretty stellar, that like made a big difference for me for sure. Cause then it wasn't really an issue. And I had proven that I had successfully like completed rigorous academics from
Right.
my master's program and from college. So, I was able to talk my way out of the poor MCAT score and like explain what happened, which is important. If you do have a red flag, you need to be able to talk about it and to be able to explain. But I was never asked about it, and then I still ended up getting into the school I wanted anyway, because Casey's where I wanted to go. So
That's
it really all
literally
ended up working out for the best.
perfect. No,
Yeah.
like I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, and like I feel like you're gonna end up exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yes.
I still don't think it was like there's no mistake that NYU was the first medical school that I got into. I got into it with the full cost of
Yeah.
attendance scholarship. Like
Yes.
I got accepted while my dad was in town at my school. It was like homecoming weekend. Like
Oh
it was
my
just
God.
perfect.
Everything's
And
perfect.
yeah, it's worked out. So I do think that like you're gonna find the school that's the right fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so important is, when you consider how many schools you're going to apply to, like, you don't necessarily always have to just like throw your hat in every single school because some of the secondary applications, they are going to ask you like, why this school? And you need to be able to explain that.
Yes.
And so one of the places that I always recommend starting is MSAR. I know that's like for a lot of MD schools, and then they have DO Explorer. Is that correct? DO
Yes,
Explorer?
DO Explorer, I believe, and they have. I'm trying to think of what else. I know the DO Explorer for sure. I can't remember what
Okay.
the other thing. I'm like trying to look it up.
No, you're
Look up what I used right
so
now.
good. But I love MSAR. It's like my favorite thing ever. If you qualify for fee assistance program, I'm pretty sure you get it for free. But if not, I think it's like 20 to 30 bucks for a year subscription, which in my opinion is worth it because it just has so much information in one place. And it allows you, I literally have it pulled up here so I can tell you guys the right information. Like you can filter by location, you can filter if a school accepts like international applicants, you can filter by median MCAT, median GPA, if they have dual degree programs, their class size, if it's public, private, the campus type. And that's initially where I started. When I was thinking about where I wanted to apply, I kind of had this idea that I was going to get an MPH while I was in medical school. So the majority of the schools I applied to had MD, MPH programs. Ultimately, I ended up at a school that only has like an MPH with a global health focus, and that's not necessarily like what I'm looking to do. And also like coming into medical school with a scholarship, like I just couldn't go into debt for the MPH, just because I'm not exactly sure like how it's going to factor into my career. Like maybe I'll be a doctor one day and get another degree. We'll see. So I started there. And then I also looked at mostly private schools. And the reason that I was doing that is because of this little thing that we call in-state bias. And a lot of public schools have this because public schools are going to get funding from the state. So their goal is to increase physicians working in that state. So if I looked at like the South Carolina programs, a lot of them will have like an average MCAT and GPA for in-state applicants, average MCAT and GPA for out-of-state applicants. And they'll also have a secondary application that asks you what are your connections to the state. And they also will usually have on their websites like what those connections are. So it could be like born and raised in that state, like family ties, or like maybe have a partner who has ties to that state, or going to school in that state also works. Like sometimes you kind of get like the perks of state bias in two places if you were born and raised somewhere and then went to undergrad in another state. But that's like kind of where I started to narrow it down. And then after that, of course, I started looking at like MCAT, GPA. Once you subscribe to MSTAR, like they have so much information about the curriculum. I want to go like to a pass-fail school, and I didn't necessarily.
The best.
I know you have
You gotta do it.
And then I like looked on the websites and tried to see like a little bit more about their like rotation sites and different things like that. And that's how I kind of like ended up with my school list. And then of course like I threw a lot of like super reach schools like schools like, in my opinion, like Hopkins, NYU, Harvard,
Yeah.
they're like reach schools for literally anybody. I don't care if you have like a 4.15 because they
That
just
is
like
so true.
accept what, like 1% of people, and everybody wants to go, especially like now like Einstein as well because they're gonna go free tuition, Hopkins as well because they're free tuition if your family makes under 300K, like so many
Yeah.
different factors to consider. So those are
Oh,
some of
yeah.
the things that like I considered.
Yes, I feel like so I just found if you go on aacom.org or like you Google that and just Google DO Explorer, that
Okay.
it's going to pop up. And I'm pretty sure it looks like to me it's free. I didn't like fully do the whole sign-in thing because PTSD, but you
No,
guys
we're
can do
not doing
it.
that right
We're
now.
not doing it. I have like a whole other like trauma happening with residency applications
Oh
right now, so we're
God,
not going to do
no,
this.
no.
But yeah, I think as far as DO schools, most of them, so pretty much, I think most DO schools, if not all of them, are going to be private. They're not really like the state schools. So a lot of
Oh,
the
I didn't. I
in-state
don't think I
bias,
knew that.
yeah, a lot of them are private. Like my school is private. And so sometimes the in-state bias matters, but maybe not as much as like it would for a traditional state school. That's something to consider in terms of DO school. Also, sometimes the tuition for some of these DO schools is really, really crazy. So be looking at that. I know that there are like my tuition's like 55,000 a year, and it's a lot because I
Yeah.
have to take out that plus living loan.
Hmm.
So I mean my burden for debt is crazy high.
Right.
Um, compared to like maybe someone that went to a state school that got in-state tuition
Hmm.
and yada yada yada.
Yeah.
So that's something to consider. Try to get as many scholarships as you can. I think some DO schools do give scholarships, but some of them can be a little stingy about it. I don't know of any DO schools that are tuition free, to be honest. I don't.
I was
Maybe we might have
honestly
to
just made a
fact
post
check
about like
that.
tuition free, and as I was looking, I actually could only find like 3 or 4 schools that were actually like truly tuition free, like NYU
Mhm.
Grossman, NYU Long Island, Albert Einstein, some school out in the West.
Mhm.
I'm an East Coast girly, so like anything like past, I don't know, like it just doesn't exist to me. I'm not sure, but I
I
think there was
love
like
it.
4 schools. I have a recent post, but yeah, I thought
Yeah.
it was actually more surprisingly, but no.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, but I will say a lot of these DO schools do have dual degree programs. So like I was specifically like I'm from Kansas City, so Kansas City University was, close to home for me, which
Hmm.
helped a lot because they don't really do like in-state tuition or like they don't have necessarily as strong of an in-state bias, but
Right.
I did have that like hometown tie to the school, which was definitely something that they took into consideration because I talked about it a lot. And especially in my secondaries, I said, hey, my family lives in Kansas, it's where I grew up, and so this is
Right.
where I'd like to go, blah, blah, blah. So that's important.
And
I would
before
also
you
say
go
when
on,
you're
I
looking
also
at DO
wanted to like,
schools,
sorry.
something that, oh, what?
Sorry, I was just gonna say, and I think another thing to consider when you
Oh,
think about
yeah.
like they want to have a good yield, like they
Mm-hmm.
don't want to have to like pull a lot of students off their wait list. So even if it's
Right.
not like a official in-state bias because they get state funding, like you're from Kansas City, like you're so much more likely to go there.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of
Yes.
sense.
100%. 100%. So it's important if you do have ties to a city or a state that you're applying to medical school and tell them. Definitely tell them. Even if you're not from the area. Like I went to a college in Oklahoma City and I have ties to Oklahoma City. And so I applied to schools there and I talked about that as well.
Hmm.
And that will continue to follow you because I have also done that through residency. I have
Yeah.
talked about my ties to all these areas that I've applied to. So it's very, very important. But the other thing last thing I was going to say about looking at DO schools, something I haven't seen at many MD schools is many DO schools, some of them do have a hospital system that is like attached to the medical school, but oftentimes they do not have enough spots for every student in their class
Hmm.
to do their clinical rotations at that place. So there are a lot of schools that will send their third and fourth year students out somewhere else in the country to do
Hmm.
their clinical rotations. That is something I would ask about. Ask about where you can do those things. Could you, like, if you move away from home for preclinical to do that, could you move back home for your third and fourth year? That's something to consider because I was from Kansas City, ended up doing my preclinical years at KCU in Joplin, Missouri, and then I ended up moving to Oklahoma City for my rotation. So I have lived like all over the place just in
Yeah.
the 4 years of medical school, which worked out for me because it's kind of what I wanted. But it's something to definitely consider and ask about when you're looking to see, like, is this a 4-year commitment to the city you're making, or is it only 2? What's the, like, where are you going to have to go after this? Because a lot of these places could be a little more rural. So if you're not interested in that, you need to know that ahead of time. Because I'm more of a city gal. The rural life is not for me.
Yeah.
I need like a big city. So that was something I definitely considered in addition to, the extra like dual degrees, extra like clinical experiences. What kind of early clinical experience could I get? Like all the normal stuff.
Right. And that's so important because, like, if you have a partner, if you have kids, if you have family nearby,
Mm-hmm.
like, that's so important to think about. Like, clinical years, I feel like clerkship year is the hardest up until that point, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like in your journey to
Yeah.
medical school. And so, just like for me personally, NYU, we have four hospitals that we rotate at, which are all with, like, 3 of them are within a half mile, and then the other one's right across the river, and they provide like a ferry transportation for us. And so that's super convenient because, like, I knew that I was going to medical school in a city where I literally knew nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was building these relationships throughout my preclinical year, and I feel like I would have just been distraught if I had to like lose all of those relationships,
Yeah.
because I did come here by myself. And like, so just being able to like build my friend group and like continue to like grow that throughout my clinical years. And then now knowing that even though we're doing electives, like all of our electives are still at these same hospitals, or maybe some other sites across the city, but
Yeah.
still all within like transportation via like the public transit system. So that was definitely something that I considered as well. Like, I wanted to be in one place and be able to call that home.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
absolutely something to consider. And also like the way that they do the ranking system, like
Mm-hmm.
for the clinical rotations as well. And this is stuff like you can find on the website, or you can chat with students. Like, once you get an interview, like they're expecting you to ask these questions on interview
Yeah.
day. Like, it shows like
100%.
you've done some thought about what the rest of your life is going to look like. So because our hospitals are so close, we did rankings by rotation. So like Brooklyn is the one far one. So like people would like rank Brooklyn low if they didn't want to go over there. But then you have people that live in Brooklyn, and we're like, give them all the Brooklyn rotations. So you just have
Yes.
people that love to go to Brooklyn and take that ferry and have like a little bit of Zen time in the
Mm-hmm.
mornings to themselves. So we didn't have like a big like ranking process
Yeah.
beforehand, but maybe you can chat a little bit about this. Like, I've heard, like ranking, you go to like one place for the whole time, and sometimes they consider like certain factors. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, can you talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. So the way that my undergrad, the way that my med school did it is
Undergrad
during,
medical education.
it's true, undergrad medical, maybe it's because I'm looking at too many graduate medical education things right now. The way that we did it was during second year, they gave us a list of all of the core clinical sites. So I felt very lucky in that when we matched to a third year clinical rotation site, you were committed to that city and to that place for the entire third year. That's something that my school does. That's not the way that every
No.
school does it though, because I know some places that some DO schools make their students travel to like more than an hour away from their site to go do a rotation. And so then hopefully, like, I don't know how they do with housing, but you do not want to be paying for Airbnbs and like doing those costs as a third year.
No.
That's something I'd be very wary of. So unless you have like family or people to stay with, or your school provides that like kind of a place to stay for you, I would ask about that for sure, and ask like, well, how am I supposed to pay for that, or what do students do? That's very important. But the way we did it is my school gave us a list of all the core clinical sites, the cities and the hospitals that they were at. We were able to ask questions about like what rotations were available, because not every place had the same electives. So if you were really interested in like physical medicine and rehab, that's what I thought I wanted to do going into third year. I was looking for a place that I could do that. Not every place had that as a elective. So you want to be paying attention to that. And so we ranked all of every single program that was, or every single site that was available. We were required to rank everything. And I was able to write a letter that like stated which place I wanted to go to. So I wanted to move to Oklahoma City because my husband he was an adjunct professor here, and he was kind of doing that online, but he had some like good job opportunities, and we have family here. And so I wanted to move here for 2 years if I got the opportunity, because I thought, why not? That sounds fun. I had heard really good things about the hospital system that I was at in third year here. So I wrote a letter to the dean and was able to kind of like highlight all the reasons why I wanted to go to Oklahoma City. I submitted my rank list, ranked Oklahoma City #1, and then then we kind of have like a match day. It's not like as dramatic as actual match day, but they send us an email like on a Friday and it tells us where we're going to go for third year. So then you find out if you're moving, if you're not moving, where you're going. You know, not everyone got what they wanted, so that's a risk like that you just kind of have to take. I was totally prepared to like not get what I wanted, but luckily it worked out for me and I ended up moving, which also a little crazy because I took step 1 and I literally moved like 2 weeks later. So that was wild.
Too much.
My husband is a saint. He basically packed our entire house alone because I was studying for boards.
You'll be paying him back once you start making that gut anesthesia money.
I know. Hopefully,
you owe him a lot of good vacations.
I really do. I owe this man so many vacations because every board exam period, he's just like alone. Like he is responsible for everything in this house because I am not a part of it.
That's why I go home every time. I'm like, parents, please take care of me. It was so nice.
Yeah.
I was like, my dad was like doing my laundry. I was like, I just cannot right now. I just need to like lock in, do school, like bring me dinner. I can't.
Yes. When I tell you, I think I got to the point during step 1 studying, which to me, step 1 studying was like it was probably more stressful than step 2 studying.
100%.
Even though step 2 was more important, I just like felt like I knew what I was doing that time. But I remember like
too much.
I remember like laying in bed one night and he brought me like he had like made me a hot chocolate just to like be nice, and like it was just like a sweet, like, you know, he could just tell I was stressed. And he hands me the hot chocolate and was like, here, I just made this for you. Like, I figured you might like it. I start crying. Immediate tears.
That's
and he was like,
sweet.
oh no. He was like, are you good? Like, and I was
We're
like,
not good
I'm okay.
actually, but
I was like, I'm just really tired. And I'm just like bawling over my hot chocolate. And I'm just like, it's really good though. And like, that's just,
I love that. Where can I find you one of those? Where do they have those at? I don't think they have those in New York.
I mean, we gotta come to Oklahoma City, I guess.
I gotta move.
I actually technically met him in Kansas City, so maybe try Kansas City first. Because
next time I go to the AFP conference, I'll take a night out on the town.
Yeah, there you go. You know, ponder around.
Exactly.
See who you can find.
Exactly. Well, I see it's almost 9 p.m. I don't want to take too much more of you guys' time. I really appreciate everybody that's been able to hop on to this chat. I think this has been so good. I think we've also kept it mostly PG, so I can probably save this and post it for other people to watch back. The last thing, we are gonna do, I'm gonna be hosting this monthly. I'm gonna have other people come on and chat. But if you guys loved Kennedy, definitely let me know, so that way maybe we can do some more. Well, we're gonna do some more collab posts, but now that we both have time, make sure that you give her a follow. If you're not following me already, do so as well. And if you want more application assistance, make sure to check out my course From Applicant to Accepted. Because you joined the live, I have a discount tonight. Use the code LIVE, LIVE, until midnight. So you have 3 hours because I'm an EST, and you can get 20% off. And so this gives you step-by-step guide to applying to medical school, including some of the things that we talked about, including are you ready to apply, how to create a school list, goes through application and interviews and all that good jazz as well. And then it also includes an application review by me. So make sure you check that out. I know you're planning to match, move to residency, all that good jazz, but do you anticipate doing any services or helping pre-meds as they're applying to medical school this cycle?
Yeah, actually, that's something I was literally just thinking about, because I've gotten a couple of requests for people applying to residency next year, or people applying to anesthesia too, wanting me to read personal statements.
Put me on the top of the list, please.
Check on their CV. Yeah, I got you. So yeah, I think I am. I mean, I'm in my living my best 4th year life right now, and so I am happy to read through people's personal statements. I feel like I'm a pretty good editor. I'm pretty I'm not mean, but I'm pretty picky. So if I edit it,
you should be.
I'll give you the good stuff, But yeah, happy to answer questions. I mean, feel free to DM me about anything, especially the low MCAT, how to navigate that, because I feel that was a rough time, and I totally identify. But I made it through, and if that's what you need to hear, and just need to hear that you can still do well in med school even if you get a bad MCAT score, then I'm your girl. So yeah, I'm happy. I mean, Morgan's got such a better system. Mine's like so casual. I'm like, just DM me and we'll just like figure something out, you know? It's
Sometimes
like, it'll be fine.
that's the way to do it, honestly.
I'm trying to get more professional about it, but you know, med
Well,
school's
we'll
just med
chat. We're
school.
gonna make you all
So
professional. I also have like so much time on my hands, and I'm just enjoying it. Oh, I'm commuting for the next, not this week, but then like the first 2 weeks of February to Long Island. So we're gonna have to have some more chats because I have like an hour and a half commute both ways. So
heck yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, this is like I'm about to start emergency medicine, which is literally my last like real
My
month
God,
of med school. Like this
that's
is like my
actually
last like
insane.
formal rotation, and then I'm just like doing like electives and chilling and doing like online stuff. So this feels like
I
it.
love it.
And then, but yeah, I really want to help people out and like try to like, you know, spread the love and just pay it forward. So happy to help. Follow me, follow Morgan. We're here for anything. I know there were a couple questions we didn't like necessarily
I
get
know.
to. I think some for that I feel like some could be answered in her course for sure. And especially people that are asking for like Morgan to read through things and all that. That's perfect for the course.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and I'm gonna save this. I don't really know how this works, because I don't do a lot of lives, but I'm gonna see if I can like save this on my account, and then usually I can like comment there. So I'll try to address some of those questions throughout this week. But make sure that you guys just continue to follow us both. Good luck with applying this cycle, and
Yeah.
next month, February 22nd, it's gonna be a Sunday. I'm gonna be going live with another amazing. Actually, it's going to be a pre-med this time, and we are going to chat about crushing the MCAT. Both of us got 519s on our MCAT, so we're going to talk all about that. So just be on the lookout. And thank you so much again, Kennedy, for joining me, and thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you so much. I had so much fun.
Yes, see y'all.